You are watching The Quiet War, a series about the World War II heroes history forgot, not the famous names. The ones who should be. In this episode, Nancy Wake. There is a photograph of her from 1944. She is standing in a forest in central France, wearing overalls too big for her frame, a Sten gun slung over one shoulder. She is laughing, not smiling for the camera. Genuinely laughing. Around her are men with hollow eyes and dirty faces, men who have been hiding in those woods for years, men who have watched friends die. And she is laughing. That is the first thing you need to understand about Nancy Wake. She laughed at the Gestapo. She laughed at death. She laughed because the alternative was despair, and she refused to give despair that satisfaction. The Gestapo called her the White Mouse. She was their most wanted person in France. 5 million francs on her head. Hundreds of men assigned to find her. And she just kept slipping through their fingers, always one step ahead, always smiling. They never caught her, not once. But let us go back to the beginning, before the war. Before the White Mouse, before any of it. Nancy Wake was born in Wellington, New Zealand in 1912, the youngest of 6 children in a family that had more mouths than money. When she was still young, the family moved to Sydney, Australia, and when she was 16, she ran away from home. Just walked out and never looked back. That is another thing you need to understand about her. She was always leaving. Always moving, always searching for something she could not name. She worked as a nurse for a while. Then she became a journalist. She had a gift for words and a hunger for stories. By the mid-1930s, that hunger had carried her to Europe. First London, then Paris, then Vienna. She was working as a correspondent, filing dispatches about politics and culture, when she saw something that changed her forever. It was 1934. She was in Vienna. And in the streets, she watched men in brown shirts beat an old Jewish man senseless while police stood by and did nothing. She watched the crowd turn away. She watched civilization blink. She later wrote, "I decided then and there that if I ever got the chance, I would do everything in my power to fight them." She was 22 years old. In 1939, she married a French industrialist named Henry Fiocca. He was tall and handsome and rich, and he adored her. They lived in Marseille in a beautiful apartment overlooking the Mediterranean. They had money. They had status. They had each other. It was the kind of life people dream about. Then Germany invaded Poland. Then France fell. And the life they had built became a trap. Henry was a patriot. When the Germans occupied the south of France, he immediately began working with the resistance, using his factories and his fortune to fund the underground. Nancy did not sit at home worrying. She joined him. At first, she worked as a courier. She carried messages and food and weapons hidden in baskets, hidden in coat linings, hidden in places German soldiers were too polite to search. She would flirt her way through checkpoints, laughing at the guards, letting them pat her down just enough to satisfy protocol, but not enough to find anything. One time, she smuggled documents in a box labeled sanitary napkins. The guards did not even open it. She laughed about that for years, but by 1943, the net was tightening. The Gestapo had intercepted resistance radio traffic mentioning someone they called the White Mouse. They did not know who it was, but they knew someone was running circles around them in Marseille. They tapped phones. They followed suspects. They tortured informants. Eventually, they got a name. Nancy had to leave. Henry could not go with her. He had cover stories to maintain, business interests that needed protecting, a role to play. He told her to go to England. He would join her later. She did not want to leave him. But she went. That was the last time she saw his face. Crossing the Pyrenees into Spain meant walking through snow and winter with a group of resistance fighters and one British officer who kept collapsing. He was weak. He was slowing them down. He begged them to leave him. Nancy grabbed him by the collar, pulled him to his feet, and said, "If you don't get up, I'll shoot you myself." He got up. They all made it. She laughed about that too. In London, she joined the Special Operations Executive. Churchill's secret army. Their job was to set Europe ablaze. They trained her in sabotage and cryptography and hand-to-hand combat and killing. She excelled at all of it. One instructor wrote in his report, "She is a very good and fast shot and has a cold-blooded courage which is remarkable." Cold-blooded courage. That is a strange phrase. It means she did not hesitate. She did not tremble. She did what needed to be done and moved on. In April 1944, 2 months before D-Day, she parachuted back into France. She landed in the Auvergne region, a rugged area of forests and farms controlled by the Maquis, the resistance fighters who lived in hiding. Her mission was to find them, organize them, and prepare them for the invasion that was coming. When she found them, they were a disaster. 7,000 men spread across the countryside, hiding in caves and barns, armed with hunting rifles and captured German weapons, led by men who had never commanded anyone. They had been waiting for a military leader. A general, someone with medals and maps and a plan. What they got was a blonde woman in overalls who laughed too much. The first thing she did was organize a raid on a German supply depot. They needed weapons, real weapons. She led the attack herself. They blew the doors. They took the guns. They disappeared back into the forest before reinforcements arrived. After that, the men stopped questioning her. Over the next few months, she led them in dozens of operations. Ambushes on German convoys, sabotage of railways and bridges, assassinations of informants and collaborators. She moved through the countryside like a ghost, always one step ahead of the patrols hunting her. At one point, her radio operator was killed. Without a radio, she could not coordinate with London. So she got on a bicycle and rode 500 miles across German-held territory to get a new one. 500 miles. Through checkpoints, through patrols, through villages where every face might be a traitor. She made it there and back in 72 hours. When she returned, the men stared at her in disbelief. She just shrugged. The Germans responded the way they always did. They burned villages suspected of helping the Maquis. They executed hostages. They tortured prisoners for information about the White Mouse. No one talked. Not one person. She later said, "I was not a brave person. I was just so angry about what the Germans were doing that it gave me courage. But that is not quite right. Anger gives you energy. It does not give you the ability to keep laughing when everything is falling apart." That came from somewhere deeper. After the war ended, she learned what happened to Henry. He had been arrested by the Gestapo shortly after she fled France. They tortured him for weeks, trying to get information about her. He gave them nothing. They executed him in 1943. He died alone, in a cell, without knowing whether she was alive or dead. She never remarried. She wore his wedding ring for the rest of her life. Here is the part that haunts me. After everything she did, after all the courage and all the sacrifice, history forgot her. She wrote a memoir in 1956 called The White Mouse. It sold a few copies and went out of print. She tried to run for parliament in Australia and lost. She worked odd jobs. She gave away most of her money. She spent her final years living in a London hotel room paid for by friends because she had nothing left. When she died in 2011 at the age of 98, most people had never heard her name. Why? Because she did not fit the story we tell about war. The stories we tell about women in wartime are stories of waiting, of suffering, of loss. Nancy Wake was not a victim. She was not a symbol. She was a soldier. She killed a man with her bare hands once when a sentry surprised her during a raid. She said it was quick, and she did not lose sleep over it. That kind of honesty does not make it into the textbooks. That kind of woman does not fit the narrative, so we wrote her out. She did not care. She never cared about the credit. She cared about the fight. When a reporter asked her late in life if she had any regrets, she said, "I'd do it all again." Every bit of it, and she meant it. You can hear it in her voice. There is another photograph of her from after the war. She is older now, gray-haired, standing in a garden somewhere. She is not laughing in this one, but she is not sad either. She's just looking at the camera with a kind of quiet defiance as if to say, "I was there. I did what I could. The rest is up to you." Her name was Nancy Wake. The Gestapo called her the White Mouse. History called her forgettable. She was neither. This has been the Quiet War. The war had millions of names. Most of them we never learned. This was one of them. Next time, Nicholas Winton, the man who saved 669 children from the Holocaust and told no one for 50 years.